Good afternoon. Welcome to Lunch with Loretta at Choice Farm Market. I'm Loretta. We're here today in our farmhouse kitchen here at the farm. This house is probably, about 130 years old or so. The farm's been in my husband's family since 1838. Now, the kitchen's been remodeled a couple of times, but it is just a typical farmhouse kitchen. Today we're going to do a cooking segment. In the comments, Kevin Drosca had suggested doing a cooking show. So here we are today, and I chose a pot roast, and there's a couple different reasons I chose the pot roast. One is that time of year, and I think pot roast is kind of a comfort food for a lot of people. I remember my mom cooking a pot roast on her cooktop, and she had a pressure cooker, and I remember the thing on the top. I don't remember the name of the thing on the top. Maybe somebody out there knows. Or I should have Googled it probably before we started, and it used to, that it would go tick, 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 tick as it rocked. And I don't know, it's just a sound that when I hear that, it just takes me right back to my childhood and knowing that we were going to have an awesome dinner. So one of the things that I get asked a lot, particularly when we first started with Benjamin beef, was how do you cook your chuck roast? I didn't start out cooking my chuck roast in a pressure cooker like my mom did because I was scared to death of a pressure cooker. And so I did mine. That's when the crock pots were coming out. And so I did it the slow and easy way in a crock pot. That you kind of have to plan ahead. You'd have to have your roast thawed. You'd throw it in the morning and it'd be ready for you, at night. A few years ago, somebody introduced me to the Insta Pot. And I thought, oh gosh, this is my new best friend. This is for, and I'm sure, a lot of you maybe are like me, or maybe you're better than me, but I often fail to plan ahead for a meal. And so then I'm kind of stuck like, oh gosh, what am I going to have for dinner? The Instapot saves my butt every single time. I can pull a frozen chuck roast out of the freezer and I can have it on a plate in 2 hours with the Instapot. A couple years ago, our niece's husband, Andy, he said, Loretta, I took one of your chuck roast and we had a Friendsgiving and I made a prime rib with it. And I'm like, well, how'd you do that? And he said it was a sous vide. And I said, a sous what? He said sous vide. S-O-U-S-V-I-D-E, sous vide. This is a method of cooking, and actually a lot of high-end restaurants will use this because you can't overcook anything in this. So they'll cook a bunch of steaks in the sous vide, and then made to order, when you order it, then they will take it out of there and finish it off. But you can't overcook anything. And this is kind of the polar opposite of this one, where this one you can fail to plan ahead and in 2 hours have an awesome meal on your plate from the freezer. This one you have to plan ahead for. You have to start with a thawed roast. So you're taking it out, like 3 days ahead of time. This one will take, I do mine about 29 hours in this thing. So, you're well over a day just cooking in this thing. But I'm telling you, it's like a prime rib when you're done. In fact, a year ago, I made it for Easter Sunday, and my family did think it was a prime rib. I'm like, nope, chuck roast. So I thought I would demonstrate both of these because I really appreciate the roast in either one of these. But it's, like I said, it's like two different occasions here. So with that, let's get started. So let's start with the Instapot pot roast. And today I'm going to be doing a Mississippi pot roast. Actually, the first time I made this was just a couple of years ago. A customer of ours, Cindy Smith, had come in and asked if I had ever made one of those. And I said no. So, but I was curious because I'm always trying, want to try new things. And so I looked it up, and sure enough, I tried it. And it quickly became our favorite pot roast. So to start with, and this is the one where I said you can take it from the freezer and have it on a plate in 2 hours. So I usually start with a cup of water or so. You kind of want it like up to the trivet in the bottom. So this is the trivet. You lay that in so that your meat's not touching on the bottom of the pan, because if have it touched on the bottom of the pan, it'll tend to burn. So want the water up to about the bottom of the trivet, about 1 cup. And here's my frozen chuck roast. This is a 3-pound roast. Well, 2.77, so close to a 3-pound roast. So we're gonna cook that. So sometimes when it's frozen, it's hard to get out of the package. And if in the pot, our roasts come with like a little, I don't know, paper over it after you get it out of the package. And sometimes if it's folded over wrong, it kind of will fold into the roast itself. If that happens, just run a little bit of hot water over it and it'll come right off. It'll peel right off. Sometimes you gotta use a little bit of muscle. There you go. So set that right on your trivet there. And then you want a half a stick of butter. And I kind of break it up into, about like thirds. So pats of maybe just over a tablespoon there. And I lay that directly right on the roast. And then you want 1 package or 1 ounce of the au jus sauce. And I pour this just right over top. Just pouring that over. And then you want about 1 ounce of ranch seasoning. This comes in 1 ounce packets too, but I make this enough that I've got it in a, that might have been a little more than 1 ounce, but we're close. And then I put the pepperoncinis. Do like 6 to 8 pepperoncinis on here. One thing this morning, I made up the one that we're going to show you when it's done after 2 hours. Didn't wash my hands good enough and went to put my contacts in. I recommend you wash your hands really well before you do that because it burns. So then I pour a little bit of the pepperoncini juice in there too because pepperoncini are good. All right, so that was as simple as it gets. Everything's all set. We're just going to pop it right here in our Insta Pot. Seal the lid. Make sure that your vent is shut, otherwise it won't build up the pressure. Now, typically if you do a roast, I think the rule of thumb is 20 minutes per pound of roast that's in here. But because it's frozen, we're gonna add on a half an hour. So typically I would run this for about 60 minutes. But like I said, frozen to plate in 2 hours. So we're gonna do 90 minutes on here. So I'm gonna push the pressure button, push the up button till I get to 1.5 hours, and you're all set. So it'll take about, I would say about 15 minutes for the pressure to build up. And then after that, you'll see the timer start to count down. It'll count down while it's on the pressure. Once the 1.5 hours is done, then you'll see that it starts to count up, and that's to keep warm. And typically what I do with my roast is I will do like a 10 to 15 minute natural release on it. You could do a quick release, but just because it's frozen, I like to add that extra few minutes in there to make sure that it's done. The other thing is, you notice I didn't sear it, and it's because it's frozen. If I were to put a thawed one in here, I would sear it first, and you can sear it right in the Insta Pot. You just push the saute button on here, let it heat up, put some oil in, and sear it right in there. So it's really a 1-pot meal. A lot of people will stop it like 10 minutes early and put vegetables in there. To me, they just get too mushy. And so I don't put the vegetables right in my Insta Pot when I'm doing my Mississippi pot roast, especially if it's from frozen. So while our Mississippi pot roast is cooking, let's move on to our sous vide method of cooking a pot roast. So I've got a sous vide here, and this was an all-in-one kit. So I got the container and the wand all in one. Previously, I just bought the wand, and then I just have a pot, and I put it in there, and then I cover it with aluminum foil to kind of keep it in there so the heat doesn't escape and the water evaporate out of it. So either or, you don't have to have this whole kit. You can do it just with a pot too. But I'm going to start out. I've got a 3-pound chuck roast. Now this one is thawed, so you do need to have this thawed. I thaw usually about 1.5 days, sometimes 2 days, because ours come really, they're frozen solid because they're in deep freezes. So you want to make sure that it's completely thawed. So a lot of people they'll take this and they'll like put salt on it and just put it in their refrigerator overnight uncovered. I don't do that. I just go ahead and just stick this whole thing right in the baggie from the package itself. Go ahead and set that down there. You want to make sure you use a good quality baggie because you don't want a hole in it. A lot of times if like the roast has a bone in it or whatever, I will double bag it. So what you're going to do is you're going to put it in the baggie. Wipe this up here. And you want to make sure you get all the air. It's very important that you get all the air out of it because that will affect the way it cooks. And so I just kind of squeeze. I'll fold it over itself. I'll get zipped up to where it's almost shut. Just kind of squeeze again. And you don't want your seal in the water. So it's very important when you go ahead and put this in. And that's what the clothespins are for. I use it to keep my seal out of the water. You want your roast completely submerged, but you really don't want the seal in the water. So I set this in here, and a lot of times when I put it in here, you notice I didn't zip it all the way. So I'm going to kind of push it in there, and then this will kind of push some of the air out. And then I zip it. And see, now I've got a really nice airtight seal here. So, and then you put this thing on, and I put it right over this. And just because I am afraid of that, I've had it before where it's gone ahead and kind of fell off and leaked water in. So I put my little clothespins on there. It just kind of helps hold it in place so the baggie's not going to move on you. And then I've got my wand. I don't know, there's probably a technical name for it. Probably should have Googled that before I started, but anyway, we're going to put this on. Now, we want a temperature of about 135, and there's all kinds of different recipes out there, but I've done this one several times, and I really like this one. So now I've got my wand. I'm going to set my temperature to 135, and then my time, I want 29 hours. I've seen anywhere from 24 to 29 hours. I've always done 29 hours just because I know you can overcook it. And I should have mentioned too, this one, you notice I didn't sear my roast either with this one. And that's because you're going to do a reverse sear. Most of what you do in the sous vide, you do a reverse sear. So you're going to cook it first and then sear it when you're done. So I've got my wand set. I'm at 135 degrees. I'm at 29 hours. Put the cover on. This just helps it so it doesn't evaporate. And push go. And that's it. It's that simple. Let's go ahead and set this aside and we'll check in on our Mississippi pot roast. One thing I really like about the Mississippi pot roast is it's kind of versatile. You can serve it on a bed of mashed potatoes. You can serve it as you normally would, just a regular roast. You can shred it and serve it on a bun and have it be a slider. What I usually do with this is I will serve it the first night as a roast, just like I would a roast. I'd make a vegetable or whatever to go with it. And then the leftovers I heat up, I shred, and then I use it on a hot, like some people call it a hot beef sandwich or an open face sandwich. So our pot roast is just about done. It's been in natural release right now for about 15 minutes. Now we're going to go ahead and do what's called a quick release, and that'll just let the rest of the pressure off so we can go ahead and open it. I always use an oven mitt because it is hot steam, and then I'll put a cloth over it just so I don't get steam all over my ceiling or whatever. So you want to do this really slowly, and there's not really much steam left in here at this point, but you can still see there is some steam. I'll take that off just so you can see it. So there's a little bit of steam. My buttons already went down, so I am good to go. So now we're going to go ahead and open the Insta Pot. Oh my gosh, that smells so good. And your pot's going to be hot, so you want to make sure that you've got gloves on. Actually, I'm going to set that there. And I'm going to pull the trivet out. And then you've got your au jus in here. And I save that. Now, when I serve this as a pot roast, a lot of times I'll thicken some of that and just make a regular gravy for it. But you just want to make sure if you want to use it like a French dip or whatever the next day to save some of that without thickening it. So you just take it off your trivet. I always pull the fat off. I have a husband who's very picky about his fat. Pull the bone out. And then you can just fork it apart and just look at that. Look how tender that is. Oh my gosh, it smells amazing. So you just kind of fork it like that. And then, like I said, you can serve it over just a slice of bread, pour a little bit of the au jus or gravy over it. And like I said, the first day I usually will just cut it up and serve it as a regular roast. All right, so there you have it. That's a Mississippi pot roast, quick and easy, really nice meal to have on these cold, chilly days. Let's go ahead and check in with our sous vide and see how that's going. Well, let's see how our sous vide pot roast did. We're just about done here. So we're going to take it out of the pot. I always kind of take this out first and get it set aside so I don't knock it over. And you can see what I mean, where you don't have to buy the whole kit thing. You can buy just the wand and then put it into a pot. And like I said, I always cover it if I'm going to do these long roasts, because that way the water doesn't evaporate and it doesn't lose the heat quite as quickly. Put that aside. And this one, I actually did go ahead and double bag. I wasn't trusting the baggie on it after I got it in there. So I did go ahead and double bag it. Now what you want to do is you want to take your roast out. You're going to set it down. And I'm going to set this over here so it doesn't leak. There we go. And you want to pat it dry and you want to let it rest on the counter. Some people put it in the refrigerator. I usually just leave it on the counter. About 15 minutes, you're going to want to let it rest. But make sure you have the water, the liquid off of it, because you're going to sear it. Like I said, we do a reverse sear on this, and so you don't want it popping. So this needs to rest. We're going to let it rest for about 15 minutes. While it's resting, I'm going to go ahead and clean this stuff up. So we've been resting for about 10 minutes now, so I think now is a good time. I'm going to go ahead and get our pan ready so we can go ahead and do the sear. I use a cast iron. I prefer cast iron for a lot of my stuff, especially with the meats and stuff. So get that going. Get that on medium heat. My igniter went out, so we're starting our stove the old-fashioned way. I'm going to go ahead and pour a little bit of oil in there, and it doesn't matter. This is just olive oil, but you can use vegetable oil for that. So we'll let that heat up for a minute, and I think this segment's gone pretty well. I was a little nervous at first doing one by myself because I always have a co-host. But, you know, I was thinking about it and thought, well, I have a lot of conversations with myself anyway, so I should be good to go with this. And I've watched hundreds of episodes of The Pioneer Woman, so I'm certainly not to her level yet, but I feel like we're kind of kindred spirits. She lives on a ranch. I live on a farm. She feeds ranch hands. I feed farm hands. She's got a mercantile. I got a market. We both love dogs. So, you know, I think we'd be good to hang out for a while. The only thing is I know she always says she's an accidental country girl, and I'm very much an intentional country girl, born and raised in the country, and just tried the city a couple times, but I'm better off in the country. So my husband always tests his oil to see how hot it is. He takes a little bit of spit and throws in there. If it pops back at him, he's good. Probably not something we want to do on camera if we're going to feed for a crowd. But, well, the oil's starting to pop, so go ahead and put it in there. Yep, turn it up. Probably just even a little bit more. You want to sear it on each side for about 1 minute. So just enough to get it, you know, like a little bit of a crust over it, I feel. All right, take a look at it here. Maybe a little bit longer. Now we've got it popping. Yeah, I think I want it just a little bit darker there, so I'm gonna wait a minute on this. We have done like actual prime rib in the sous vide. And what we did for that was we had an old cooler that we didn't use anymore. So Todd cut a hole in the top of it so we could put the wand through. And then we just kind of stuck it in the basement out of the way and let it go. I think on that one, I'd have to look it up for sure, but it was probably about 29, 30 hours on that. It was a big piece of meat, but I mean, that's something you can do if you have an old cooler. Otherwise, it doesn't fit in the pots. So let's see what it looks like here. I think we're about good to go. I'm going to pull it out. And this is actually rare. I think if you wanted to go, like a more medium rare, whatever, just either up your temperature or cook it a little bit longer. I think you'd want to up your temperature because, like I said, you can't really overcook these. So, and then you kind of want to cut across the grain. So the one thing you will notice about this versus like cooking a prime rib traditionally is a lot of times a prime rib you have like where it's crusty and then dark, and then just the very inside is pink. You see how this is pink all the way through? And so you get more of the rare, medium rare flavors in it. This is, like I said, you can't overcook things, and that's really good. So there you have it. This is what we call our faux prime rib. This is the only meal I've ever seen my father-in-law go back for seconds for. So if you like what we're doing, please like and share us on our social media pages. Check us out our YouTube channel. Until next time, thank you.